to Electrician Live with your host, Paul Abernathy and Jay Grunberg.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Electrician Live. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host, and with me my co-host, Mr. Jay Grunberg. Jay Grunberg, welcome to the show as always.
Hey, what's up, Paul?
Yeah. All right. Well, first things first, he's not wearing Milwaukee, so that's already a good start to the show. So we're going good already. So everybody, welcome to the show. Welcome to your weekly Electrician Live, where we talk about all things electrical, whatever the topic may be. And of course, Jay, tonight's topic is about what?
Well, tonight's topic is going to be covering inspectors and inspections.
Electrical inspectors.
And electrical inspectors. And hey, I have topics or stories about other inspectors as well, whether they were plumber inspectors that were on sites giving me grief. So tonight we're going to cover
Say it isn't so. Say it isn't so. Saying a plumbing inspector never gave you any grief. Come on now.
He's giving me some crap, if you know what I mean. Gotcha. Inspectors, how to become an inspector. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions because, again, like the viewers probably know, you coming up, you were a contractor. You have been an inspector yourself, probably chief inspector, I imagine, in some jurisdictions, and so. It's going to be an exciting show, and for those out there, feel free to call in tonight, or even if you can't call in, chime in on the chat, and we'll try to get to your questions. Absolutely.
We want to be able to answer any questions you might have. If you're thinking about becoming an electrical inspector, you want to know a little bit of the insides of what it's like to be an inspector, what are the office politics, as we like to say, when it comes to working with your municipality, some of the good things about it, some of the bad things about it. And also how to better get along with your electrical inspector. At the end of the day, they can make your job a living nightmare, or they can be very beneficial. Again, if you do it right, then they can be beneficial. Now, we'll also probably talk tonight about there's also good inspectors and bad inspectors. And again, just like anything, you can have good electrician, good educator, bad educator, good contractor overall, bad contractor. So everybody's, opinions being what they are, everybody has one. So, but we'll look at some of those things tonight and talk about it as well. And so feel free to also chime in on the chat because that's live and running, and we are monitoring the chats. While we're at it, we want to give a shout out to Mr. Schwartz. Thank you for coming. Tim Johnson, thank you. Carlos, thanks for coming in. We have... of course, we have Jay in here as well. So everybody, now, if you're in the background and you're not chiming in, let us know who you are, where you're from. Give a shout out to you. Definitely. All of our fast track students, thank you for coming. All those that are over on this YouTube channel that subscribe to the VIP or the general level, thank you for coming as well. And Jay, you hadn't caught today's episode that we released of electrical blunders, right? You haven't had a chance to see it because you were working.
No, I have not seen it.
You were working. So, what's up, Todd, down in Florida?
Hey, Todd.
Yeah, Todd's in the CMECP program. It was a good electrical blunders show. I think I was very nice. Brittany was monitoring it today because I was doing something, so she was monitoring it, and she said some people were posting some stuff, and she said, "Do you think Paul was too nice?" is what she posted in there. I don't know if anybody said anything. I thought it was pretty nice to the guy. He's a really likable guy on that episode, but just doing it all wrong. And somebody posted, if you were to do that, Jay, you go watch that episode. If you were to do that, an owner would be all over your butt. But when the owner does it, it's okay to cut all these corners.
Oh, right. It's their house.
It's theirs. They're like, I do what I want.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can imagine the inspector walks into this because there's a 100% probability here that shed did not get an inspection. Let me just say, there's almost 100% probability. Now, I don't know where that would be, but anywhere else, if a shed went up like that in the backyard My inspectors could smell that a mile away because I'd always had my inspectors riding around, and they were looking for things, wood stacked on the side of the road, any projects. Yes. They were looking to see if permits. Yeah, they would pull up to the curb and punch in the address and see if permits, and if there weren't any permits, they would issue citations and working without permits and all that. Hey, it was revenue, but we have to, again, if you don't, the old saying, Jay, is that we used to catch approximately about 20% of all the work that was really done out there. So There was so much, and we used to write citations all the time for people working without permits. And their big grief was it takes so long to get a permit that they could have the job done and finished before, permit. I'm like, that's no excuse. I mean, well, it's just to get the money. The city wants the money. I'm like, no, I mean, they probably do want the money, but the inspectors and supervisors, they want to make sure it's right and that you're doing it right, that type of thing. But it's only a shed. What happens if it burns down? Oh, it's still a building. It's still a structure. Okay.
Right.
It's like saying temporary pole doesn't have to be installed like a permanent because it's temporary. No, you wire it, you install it like it's permanent. It just might be for a temporary application, right? That type of thing. So again, grounding, bonding's the same. It doesn't matter whether it's temporary or permanent. All those principles are still the same. So again, but I love that because I know 590 in ENEC talks about temporary, but it doesn't mean that you can wire it any less, right? You still have to meet the requirements of chapters 1 through 4 of the National Electrical Code. They're dominated anyway. And then 5, 6, and 7 can modify and supplement chapters 1 through 7. And am I getting too codesy already tonight?
Well, I was going to ask you when do you want to or when do you think the NEC is going to have the DIY portion,
the section
installed?
For DIY?
Yeah, section. Yeah, the DIY.
The DIY section. Well, I don't think most of those DIYers ever cracked open a code book anyway, so it really probably wouldn't matter. Because I doubt that they've ever looked at one anyway, that type of thing. So yeah, if you get a chance, everybody out there, if you get a chance, go watch Electrical Blunders. It's the 3rd episode. They'll get even better. We have a little delay on this one because I just had so much going on, but I have a couple that I've recorded that are in the can. I just have to get them edited up. But that one is pretty good one. Just to give you one highlight, if you guys go watch that thing, he takes the LB and he actually, instead of connecting it to the cabinet, he actually drives screws through it and screws inside the LB, screws it to the wood so it won't move. Okay, it's just,
of course.
It's just
crazy. What else would you do?
Oh yeah. And so like I said, I couldn't even watch it. I remember recording it, but the day it went live, it was a couple of days ago, recorded it, and Brittany monitored it today for me. So she got a chuckle out of it, and she's not even, she's not even electrical. She's only absorbed electrical by being with me, but she said, God, that guy sucks. And I'm like, come on, be nice. He's trying to do his own building, trying to do a little bit of his own work, that type of thing. We should mention our sponsor. Our sponsor for tonight's show is CBD Pure. If you want more information about CBD Pure, just go over to our website, masterthenec.com, and you'll get more information there. In the merchandise link, there's a merchandise link. You link on it, you click on it, and you'll see that there's CBD products in it. Click that, and you can get all the information you want about CBD products. So, again, thanks CBD Pure for helping sponsor the show. All right.
What's crazy about CBD, I was just talking to my dad, and his dog is an older dog. It's about Taz is 14 years old, and he's a ball catcher. He loves to go fetch the ball. He loves to go fetch the stick. I mean, he's just very hard on himself, and now he's getting to the age where Dad has to carry him up the stairs now, and they actually just purchased the CBD things. I don't know if they're droplets or if they're cookies or whatever it is for the dog.
Yeah, it seems to be going also for people that travel. It seems that, a lot of times people give the relaxant for dogs and you put them in the car. It's getting very popular now, people to use the CBD for that, for pets, and it actually works better than some. And we have those little things you give to the dog when we go camping and taking, we got a 5-6 hour ride. They don't do crap. The dog it's funny. I'll get it out. It's supposed to taste like peanut butter. I'll get it out and I'm like, hey, Trixie, do you want it? And she'll go. The other dog's like, oh, okay, give it to me. But Trixie, she's like, I know what you're doing. You're trying to drug me. And she walks away. So the CBD stuff is probably a little bit better for them, that type, but if that'll knock them out, whatever, because his dogs get obnoxious in the car for about 6 hours or whatnot. So, hey, there you go. Mike's, watched the show today, said that I explained the mistakes very well. Well, thank you very much. I hope I got them all. Oh, welcome. So what else? We had a good Wednesday night session for the fast track students. Last night we noticed that Jay wasn't with us, because like I said,
yes,
it's below him now.
That's two in a row actually, and what happened is we're actually doing the addition to the house, and again I'm going to throw all the excuses in the book. Yeah. I'll be there next week, and I had to take a week or two off, but the addition is going good. And I got a story before we get into it, and it actually has to do with inspections and inspectors. So we called for the foundation. We're building an addition on the back of our house, and the excavator guys come out, they dig down, they have the footer pass, it's poured. Now they do the walls, the footer walls. And we scheduled the inspection for today, for this morning, so that the concrete guys could pour the walls after the inspection, passed. And we checked at 8:30 this morning. We're like, where's our number? Where's our list? Where's our name? And we call in, and they go, no, your permit's on hold. And we go, what? How come? So they say, Wired Up is not licensed here anymore, because we're the electrical contractor onto my buddy's GC permit. So our license expired last night at midnight, and so then they shut down all inspections on us, and they just put the project, any moving forward for the project is on hold. So Jalissa's on the phone with them. We're calling our insurance lady. We're getting it because we have it. We just need to renew it every year. And she's like, well, we sent you guys something. We go, no, ma'am, you didn't send us anything. So we call in a couple of times, and we're like, hey, the pour is going to have to happen today to meet schedule. And anyway, so we worked with the building department, which this is kind of for the contractors out there, is that they will work with you if you're patient and persistent. And so we actually got the inspection via pictures and a video. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So, that's what happens. It's always the electrical contractor that holds everything up, just so that proves it right there. Everybody's ready, but the electrical contractor didn't pay its fee, and there you go. Always the electrician. Always. I always blame the electrician for everything. I get it.
That's right.
Yeah, so it was a good show. Good students. Again, covered a bunch of different topics, and just kind of letting them bring questions. That's what we do. It's not a replacement for the fast tracks. It's just to give an outlet for people to ask questions and us go over certain things in the code. So I enjoy doing it, and I don't mind doing it. So those that do come, I appreciate it. Next thing you know, we look up and it's 2 hours are gone. 3 hours are gone, and you don't realize it, that type of thing. So again, people that put it in there and put that dedication in there, it's awesome. Awesome they do that.
Two thumbs up for you. And the way that you have it set up now, where it's private,
rather
than
the
classroom.
public.
Yeah, it's literally a classroom where you can unmute your mic if you want to speak, or if you have a question or a comment, or you're lost in any of the translation, because again, the code is very tricky, and you're giving us a lot in that 2 hours or 3 hours at some time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot, and we get confused, but it is definitely worth it. And the best, I was telling the guys that go to school for my company, that how much I'm also learning as well. I try to inspire those guys that are coming up to eventually, put their feet in my shoes and run their own company one day. And so I just tell them, there's never a point where you just stop.
Yeah.
You might stop for a period, kind of like lifting weights or working out. You might stop for a period, but again, you're going to get back into it if it's something you love. And
never stop. You see these guns.
I can tell.
The sheer size of that gun right there. All right. Well, let's. I see that We're just gonna call you Fat. Fat passed his first rough in today as a journeyman. Congratulations. It's always nice. Get that green tag and keep on going through the rough in. Just hope you don't get an inspector on the final who says, I wouldn't have approved that on the rough end. I need you to change it now. All right, maybe you won't get one of those. Which, speaking of that, let's go on and get into tonight's topic. Let's talk a little bit about electrical inspections.
The inspectors? Yeah.
A little bit about electrical inspectors.
Tell us a little bit about your background in electrical inspecting and how you got into it.
Yeah, so people might have listened to a podcast I did, I guess a couple of days ago, whatever, when I launched it, and it was answering some questions based on a listener who wanted to ask me some personal questions, and I figured it'd be great to do a show and answer some of those personal questions about things like office politics and all this type of stuff. But so when I started, I was an electrical contractor in Virginia, and I was still teaching all over the state. In fact, I wrote the continuing education requirements for the state of Virginia, so I was the first one doing it. So, I kind of had a cornered market, if you will, for a while, over a year and a half. And I traveled around the state, and I was teaching, and I would always have people, building officials and, administrators would attend my training. And so as a contractor, it was kind of got down a downturn in the industry. And I was always teaching electrical inspectors in my courses that I would teach. So anyway, I had one of them reach out to me and said, look, if you're interested, you ever want to be an electrical inspector, and I attend your training, and, kind of knew who he was. He said, we have a position for you here, and you'll quickly move up because we can't bring you on as a supervisor. You have to start as an inspector, and then we'll move you up quickly. I said, okay, I'll give it consideration. Well, at one point, it was one of those opportunities where I said, you know what, that takes my game to the next level because that allows me to do what I like to do, work with the code. In the electrical contracting business, I was growing with that. But again, I was also traveling all over the country for Eaton Cutler Hammer, doing their ECCN program. I helped start that for them. And I started making almost parallel amount of money as my contracting business was making, and I was teaching. But what happens is when the leader of the pack is away, the dogs will play. And so I started noticing that projects that if I was there, would be done in 3 days or 2 days or 4 days, were taking a week. And, even though I had some great guys, it just wasn't the same being there cracking the whip. And so I had to determine.
So you're talking about your company, with your guys, when you would go out and travel and teach, you would have your contractor's license back at home and licensed guys running projects for you.
Yeah, the guys that work for me. Yeah, I had a guy, Bobby, who was running and everything like that. And he would, but it just wasn't the same. They took advantage of Bobby. They wouldn't do that for me. And so I'd come back and so anyway, it got to the point where it just made more sense. So finally, the offer was too good from the municipality, and I took a job at a municipality, the city of Richmond, as their electrical inspector. Knowing full well the building official, we had Art Dahlberg, who was going to move me up very quickly. Because again, being an owner, being a leader, being an educator, that's what they wanted. So I went around and for probably about a year did, a lot of inspections, anywhere between 20, 25 a day. Sometimes more if it was a apartment complex where you could hit a bunch of them in a day, that type of thing. But again, it depended. And then what happened was quickly moved up to supervisor, and I oversaw the inspectors. Then I moved up again to the engineer position that was over the plan review and electrical inspectors. So at that point, all in that time, I was still going out doing inspections, still interacting with the public, and where I formed my beliefs that you can't fail somebody unless you provide them with a code reference, although some states don't have to do that. They can fail you, but you can ask for why you failed and they'll give it to you. I just think that it's poor practice for an inspector to not give you a code reference when they turn you down. Otherwise, I don't really know what you want me to fix. Okay. If you see something that's wrong, you got to help me because I don't know what you want me to fix. So I started training my inspectors that way. And then after quite a few years my building official left. And when he left, I was very close with the mayor and the directors and things like that. So I pretty much was running most of the department. But then I got an opportunity in Northern Virginia to be head of the codes and standards. So I was codes and standards supervisor to oversee just codes and standards rather than plan review and all that other stuff too. It's kind of a downsize, but equal responsibility. And it's a lot more inspections up there in Northern Virginia. And it's a really high pollutant, if you will, area right next to DC. So, that type of thing. And there was more money. And so I ended up going up there for a couple of years. And so, and then that's when I moved on to Nemo. But there was a period in there where I did quite a lot of inspections over a period where I started from electrical inspector up to supervisor, up to engineer for the city, and then overseeing plan review and inspections. And then I went up to Northern Virginia and did the same thing for a couple of years. Yeah. So that was the part of the inspection that I had an involvement with. So I've got to teach inspectors, lead inspectors, deal with conflict mitigation, deal with site issues, worked a lot with engineers because they would come to me to ask for advice and things like that. And they'll do that with your electrical inspector. People ask you advice all the time, that type of thing. So that's kind of, my background of where I did it. And it's pretty quickly, but I already had a good foundation as well, in inspections anyway, because I would teach it all the time. So it's kind of how I started it.
Kind of sounds like you have the same, well, obviously you have been through the process. I'm just kind of getting started with it, but my background into how I have my electrical inspector's license, I've never really done an actual electrical inspection myself because I'm not working for anybody but wired up, but for myself right now. But kind of like what you mentioned, you don't want to stop and you want to keep growing. And don't get me wrong, I love my company. I love the guys that work for me and the guys or the gals in the office. I love what we have going. I think we have a good thing going, but also in the back of my mind, I have to ask myself too, okay, what happens if this cookie crumbles? Where am I going next? What do I fall back on? Just putting tools on and maybe running a job for a large company, or maybe can I, go out and actually inspect and do something that's probably a little less labor demanding, if you would say, it's more mental demanding, I guess. But I guess that leads me to my next question is, we both come from being an electrical contractor going into the inspector field. Can someone become an inspector without having electrical contractors, or possibly not even having experience out in the field?
Yeah, so depending on where you're at in the country, I'll give you two examples of this. So in Texas, even though the IAEI, which is the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, is here down the road from where I'm at, okay, they're down the road in Carrollton, Texas. But the state of Texas has no licensing requirement for electrical inspectors. However, municipalities will have certain requirements, right? And they might require that you be a master electrician or a journeyman or whatnot. But reality is that's up to the jurisdiction. They don't have to. Okay, they don't have to be licensed prior. It's going to be something that's not state driven. That's municipality driven, right? And so you can get your, so usually what happens, and I can just, from my experience, you go become an electrical inspector. You could have been a floor sander, and you take a job as an electrical inspector. They hire you. If they hire you, you still got an interview you got to go through, right? So they got to hire you. So when they hire you, they'll tell you that you have to go through state mandated training. Like in Virginia, it's Department of Housing and Community Development. They have their own electrical course, right? And you have to take it. Okay, so you'll get a certification from the state because they have what's called Department of Housing and Community Development. I guess that's what it is. Department DHCD, Department Housing, and Community Development, and they'll give you a certification, right? But then there's a prerequisite for the city. For example, Richmond, they want all of their inspectors to have an E1 or E2 or or E3, or they have another type of testing called a Prometrics, which is equivalent to like E1 or E2. They have their own method for residential and commercial. Didn't matter which one you got, but the municipality required that. Right. And once you got that, you didn't have to renew that. You could could let that expire. But you had to get that as a prerequisite. But when it came to your state license for that jurisdiction, if a state has licensing, then that is something that you'd have to renew every couple years, and you have to have a certain amount of continuing education credit. And usually the state will provide that. Or I used to do a lot of training for the different municipalities because I gave credit to them too when I did the training. And you can do your own in-house training, and they'd get credit for renewal as well. So, so again, it's different, states, everybody's a little different. Texas, again, like I said, I can go out in the county here and you have to have an inspection at all out in the county. Okay. And so I still do inspections now out in the county for lenders as well as homeowners who don't want to trust their electrician. Because what happens is in the municipality, they got permitting. So all of the pieces of equipment that is used or the knockouts are out of it or whatever that they can't use where they get inspections, they end up using it where they don't have to get inspections.
Oh, those dirty dogs.
Yep. And so we end up finding it in, I don't know how many letters I've written saying, you know what, I'll make one call to the state, because even if they don't have inspections, they're still required to install it in accordance with the 2020 edition of the NEC. Whether there's inspections or not, they're still required to do that. And if you don't, then the state will step in and get you. So again, while they don't have statewide licensing, still get you.
Hopefully these contractors that are in that area know their 2020 code. So
yeah, we hope so.
Again, we hope so. To check this out, man, this is so cool. So Perez Union says, "Hey, master of the NEC, I am 11 years old, and I just want to say my dad loves watching your videos." So that is awesome. That's super cool.
Awesome. Thank you,
and I love how you say jokes to keep people's attention. My dad hopes to get his license. Well, we hope he gets his license too, because there's nothing like that feeling.
And you tell your dad I'm here for him. And whatever he needs, watch the videos and join in, and always come and watch the videos, and feel free to ask questions. And more than happy to help your dad any way you can, and tell him thank you for watching the videos.
Yes.
Hopefully he watched Electrical Blunders today, because I do a lot of code calling out during those videos. I try to call out code and that type of thing.
You're kind of being an inspector, I imagine, in a way, because you're inspecting it. You're just doing a virtual inspection or a virtual video inspection.
I just wish that I could give them a red tag. After I did my inspection, I wish I could go red tag.
Red tag. So for Carlos out there, because Carlos, if I'm not mistaken, he's actually here in Denver, and kind of to piggyback off what you said, Denver, in order to meet their qualifications as an electrical inspector, you have to have a journeyman's level license. And so, again, I think they probably would hope or want to add masters. I don't know what their turnaround inspection is like. You got to think about that too. Probably the stress, how many inspections you're doing a day, how late you're getting home. I mean, there's a lot of factors when you're transitioning into an inspector role, I imagine. And just like today, I had scheduled an inspection yesterday for today in the city of Denver, and they actually canceled it and pushed it out because it's an overflow for them. So they have too many inspections and not enough inspectors right now. So again, I think the demand for electrical inspectors is probably pretty high, and wouldn't you say maybe that would be a good thing to have?
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second, because I see a lot of people posting sometimes real nasty stuff on posts. For example, they'll say those that teach can no longer do, and those that can't do become inspectors. That is the most idiotic, foolish thing I have ever heard in my life. You have a lot of great educators who still have the cuts and scars on their hands from working in the field. Okay? I can take all the fat boy comments you want, but I put my time in the field. If you don't believe it, Google it. Look at it. Hell, call my brother. Call other people. Call Virginia. Call K-Tech, the school I went to. Heck, call the city of Richmond. I put my time in. There's a lot of educators that have put their time in, and they've gotten to the point. Now, any educator who's 22 years, 23, 24 years old and want to say that they are a seasoned educator, because they haven't put their time in. They might have looked at the code. I'm not going to bash them, but you haven't been seasoned yet. In fact, I don't know many educators out there who at least haven't spent at least one cycle in this code book. In other words, look at the front and see if you've ever seen their name appear in here. I have the most respect for the educators whose name appears in here. Okay, people like Phil Simmons, for example. Those type of educators, that names that appear in here. Okay, so before you bash people or educators and say they don't have the experience, you got to do a little research. Now, talking about the electricians that can no longer do, so now they teach, or those that can't, that become inspectors, that is the most foolish thing I've ever seen, because electrical inspections now is a career path. It is legitimate. Today we're forcing kids, okay? We're forcing kids to go through school and get things like construction management degrees, right? And they're just, in some cases like that, I mean, that's okay. But again, we need electricians. We need educators. We need people that do that. But as far as a trade path, electrical inspector is a great trade path. Great. Municipalities, there's benefits to working for a municipality and becoming an electrical inspector. One, security, because they usually have a grievance process. So you can't really get fired once you get past the probation period. Okay, I used to say that about the city of Richmond all the time. I mean, you either had to bribe people or take a bribe on an inspection, okay, or do something, and you had to be documented. They ain't getting rid of you. You know what I'm saying? They ain't getting rid of you. So it's very much job security. Plus, they usually have a good retirement, right? So, I mean, there is great benefits for people to say it's those that can't do anymore. Hey, maybe they just don't want to pull wire anymore. Maybe they've done that for certain years. Well, George is trying to solicit money here, buddy.
Hey, man, send it over. But a lot of the inspectors that I come in contact with, because I talk to these guys. Again, we're the same. I've always put myself, on the same level field as them. But again, like you've always mentioned, there's things you can learn from people.
Sure.
What I find out about these guys is that, one, they can't do work in their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But a lot of them do work outside of their jurisdiction.
And I used to do that. Okay, when I was an electrical inspector, I didn't get rid of my electrical contracting business right away. I just couldn't do work in the jurisdiction that I was an inspector. But I got permission from my building official, and he said, as long as it's not projects that any of your people or you can inspect, we don't care. And the secret to that is let people know up front. Don't be secretive about it. Okay? Yes. Although I had some of my guys that work for me that I knew were doing work in the city, and I caught one of them inspecting their own work. That is a no. Okay, so I would document that, and in order to fire somebody, you have to build a case. Right. Only time I ever fired an inspector was in Northern Virginia, and an inspector was basically blatantly insubordinate. Every time I asked him to do something, he would give me a little lip, and I document it. And then I went to a project, and it was running close to 4 o'clock. We were getting off at 4. And the guy said, look, we're running behind. You're already here. Can you do me a favor and look at the air conditioning AHU unit on the roof while you're here? And he looks at him, and I was there because I would go around and follow up on the inspectors and help them out or do an inspection or something. I was always engaged. And if there was an issue, I'd come out there. But he basically there, and he knew I was there, and the guy asked, and the guy was sincere, and he said, can you look at this unit while you're here? And he looked right at him. He knew I was right here, and he goes, nope, not going to do it today. Call it in on whatever another day. And I looked at him. I said, no, you're here now. Go inspect that AHU unit. We still have 15 minutes to go like that. And he looked at me and he said, nope, ain't going to do it. And walked right past me. That was the final straw. I went back and I called him in the next day into the office and said, get your stuff, you're out. But I had to get approval from HR to do that. Okay.
Of course, you have to follow the proper steps. And again,
had to
I like you
document
said
everything.
early, there's politics into it, and there's politics into a lot of businesses as well. I've been a part of a lot of businesses. That's why I kind of started my own, was to try to
Mhm.
not come across and have that atmosphere. I want work to kind of be fun in a way. But again, yeah, that's bad. He had to go, man. I can
and
see
I got
it.
rid of him. Boop. And that the only one that I ever did that to. And the funny part about it, he was one of the older inspectors and was well knowledgeable. So it was a tough thing to do. But, remember that old saying I say about the cancer within your company, or the cancer within? He was constantly the cancer within the organization, always stirring up crap. So when you're given the opportunity, and that was the opportunity, I removed that from the municipality, that type of thing. Also, I did notice, I want to say before it's too late, I did notice that, Perez said his dad is sick with COVID. I hope he gets better soon. All thoughts and prayers are with him. So hopefully he feels better very soon.
Yeah, JB, how did the E1 compare to the journeyman test? The E1 is for residential. So, and it's been a long time since I've done the journeyman tests for myself, but I would say the E2 probably was a little more
Do you have a lot of calculations on your E2?
My E2, I
Usually
had
not a lot of calculations on these things.
I want to say out of 80 questions, I probably had maybe 7 to 8 that were calculations.
And were they intense calculations, or just kind of a one-stepper, two-stepper quick?
Just a one-stepper. I mean, we even did the calculations with the transformers. I don't know what you
primary, secondary, things like that.
Yes, and due to watching your videos, I actually knew where to go to look for the percentages and everything. So
beautiful. So you already know 450.3. You already knew all that stuff, and that's why it's so important, folks. Watch those videos. Okay. Yes, I might say a lot. I might be repetitive a lot. I might say things over and over again, and I might get nasty emails that say, Paul, why do you repeat things over and over? I've been doing this for 30 years. There's a reason why I'm repetitive. You don't have to understand it. Just absorb it. You can like me or hate me. It's kind of like Trump, right? You can either like or hate him. I'm not getting political tonight. You can love him or hate somebody. But when you put somebody in leadership, you want them to be a leader. And so if I tell you something, it's something that I'm telling you for a reason. If I'm repeating it, there's a reason I repeat it. Okay.
Of course.
George says, how is it to become an inspector in Texas? Right. So let me give you a little tip on being an inspector. So an inspector, for example, in Texas, since I told you that the county doesn't require, so there's no state licensing for inspectors. So actually, an electrician can do quite well if they want to add inspections to their repertoire. So you can do out in the rural counties where there isn't any municipal inspections. If you're an electrician, you can offer to do electrical inspections. Just be savvy, because you don't want TDLR to come after you, because again, you got to make sure that you're not letting something go that's not in violation, but you're not sure how they would ever find out anyway, because there's no state licensing. Now, when it comes to municipalities, the way to become an inspector there is you have to wait for an opening and apply for it. And if you're already an electrician, you already have a leg up. Just go in there. And some key things when you do an interview about inspections is don't go into an inspection with a chip, and don't go into an inspection like you're going to save the world. They don't want to hear that. Trust me. The politics and the pressure that they have on the mayor and everybody that's on them, you have a few inspectors who might want to go, balls to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the supervisory staff and the building officials, they do not want renegades. They might act like they want it, but every time they get a renegade and something happens, a complaint will come down through the mayor or through the city manager, and the heat gets on the building official. They don't want heat. So don't go in there acting like you're going to clean up this town. I do know some electrical inspector people that win interviews for that and went in there like, I'm a code guy and they're going to do that. I'm like, dude, tell them what they want to hear.
The
Yeah, tell them what they want to hear. It's the key.
And you know what they want to hear is
code is
they
code.
want you to listen to what they have to say. Again, we've gone over this as far as like apprentices coming to the work field. It's the same thing, man. You're going into someone's occupation, someone's leadership, and you're going to try to be a valuable member to that team. And in order to do that, you have to understand their way. Again, people have certain ways. You got to show up on time. They have certain schedules, so they got to find out if you're going to play the part. If you go in there like you know it all, then really you're kind of defeating the purpose of getting in there. I have a couple questions for you though. These are going to be rapid questions from the guys in the chat. George says, is there a level 3 E3? Is there a level E3?
Yes. So that's an electrical plans examiner. So you got E1, which is residential, E2, which is commercial, E3. These are all ICC certifications, by the way. And you can go to iccsafe.org and you can find out all about them. But that's electrical plans. And I've had E1, E2, and E3. Now, I didn't renew them because I'm not going to do that anymore. And I didn't want to pay the money to have those certifications. But I have had all those before. And, personally, from my experience, they aren't harder exams, right? They're not harder than electrician exam, right?
Okay, hold on. Let me see here. Let's go. Bernard says, should I take my master's test if I want to start my own company?
Well, in most cases, you have to be a master to start your own company. Then the difference would be, let's take Ohio. So Ohio doesn't have a master's license, okay? They have an electrical contractor's license, which is equivalent to the master. Right. So when you want to be a contractor, or you want to do your own work for yourself, it raises the bar a little bit because you have to be able to pull permits, but you also have to know business law. You have to know jurisdictional law and all those type of things that the normal electrician would not need to know. Right. Yep. They just out there doing the job. But when you want to own it and pull permits and you want to be the responsible, then you got your insurances you got to have and all this kind of stuff you've got to have. Then that's when you would be the master or equivalent to the master.
Yeah, I call that process playing big leagues, man. When you want to be an electrical contractor and you go get that $1 million insurance to cover your butt, and then you start hiring people, now you're playing big leagues, man. Now, someone might tell you that who doesn't have a license, your next door neighbor who is an electrician, is probably a Apprentisaurus, and go, hey, man, I'm going to go wire my buddy's basement. Not permitted, whatever. You know what? Go ahead and do it. But if you want to play big league ball, get your license, get your contractor's license, get your insurance, and play it right. Don't try to fool these city inspectors and beat around the bush, because it's going to bite you in the butt eventually.
And when we, city inspectors, I mean, I used to be an IAEI member. I love the organization, but most people know I'm not a member anymore. Still support it. But I'm not a member, and for other reasons outside of the scope of whether or not they provide a good service. They provide a great service to the electrical industry. They definitely do. And it's a great association, great people. But there's reasons why I'm not a member of it anymore, and that's a personal reason for me. It's kind of a principle thing. But other than that, there's some great inspectors out there, and there's some bad inspectors. And so when I'm asked about what's the difference, what determines a good one versus a bad one? Any inspector who comes to a job site that already has the preconceived notion that you're going to fail is a bad inspector. I wanted to pass every job. One, because I ain't got time to come back again, but I want to make sure it's right. But if I got to come back, I want to make sure that you understand what you did wrong so that I can come back, right? And it's my job to let you know what you did wrong. So, and people say, well, that's not my job. It's not my job. Bull crap. Yeah. Bull crap. You're an inspector. You're an authority figure. If you're going to reject somebody, do them the decent courtesy of telling them why you rejected them. Don't be a cop-out. That's cowardly, in my opinion.
Do you
So,
think there's a different hat that you have to wear when you're an electrical
absolutely.
contractor and when you're an electrical inspector?
First thing I said,
and what do you think is the difference or the hardest thing?
first thing I said to, so one of the better electrical inspectors that I've ever met, besides myself, one of the ones I've ever met was a guy named Jeff Harris. So Jeff Harris, I hired Jeff for the city of Richmond. He rapidly rose very quickly up the ranks. He attended every seminar I did. He was just so engaged in the code, and I like that because that's your job. Okay, as an inspector,
Yes.
That is your job. That is your primary job, is to be really well versed in the code. The next thing you know, he wanted to go to, he ended up taking my job as the engineer, and when I left and went to Northern Virginia. And I told him the first time he came to job when I hired him, and I got to tell you this story, and I know I'll get a bunch of crap for this. When I was there, I hired a new inspector. He was about 58. He came to work. This is before I hired Jeff. He came to work. I insisted on taking him on his first day and showing him what we all right, I'm going to get a bunch of crap for this. You ready? I expected to show him what was expected of an inspector that works for our jurisdiction. I took him through the day, ran him around around to inspections. We went around, showed them what we expected, the level of quality. Went home last night. The next morning, he never showed up for work. And I was like, he didn't last long.
Yep.
And come to find out, he passed away in the night.
Oh, no.
And so I took crap forever on that, saying I done killed the new inspector.
Oh.
Only thing that was worse is the supervisor that I was over. I was the head guy. I had a guy under that was his supervisor that went with us. He didn't know that he passed away. And he was calling his house, leaving messages all morning. That's not how we work here. Paul's not going to like that. You need to be at work on time and all this. Come to find out, he had passed away, and his wife called me, and she said, I'm getting all these calls from the supervisor, and he passed away, and that's why he's not there, and I'm so sorry. I was like, oh, my God, no, we're sorry. Okay? That's just, so anyway, I got a bunch of crap about that. So that's how I was able to hire Jeff, because the opening was now open again, sadly. And so Jeff would have never been hired. And I hired Jeff, and Jeff is probably one of the better inspectors I've ever run into. He was a believer in giving code. He was a believer in educating. If you didn't understand why I was failing you, he'd take the time to tell you. And I tried to foster that, and he carried that mantle and ran with it. And that's a person. See, people don't realize that when you become an inspector, that is your job, to inspect and educate. You took that role. Now, office politics, right? One guy will get paid $58,000 and one guy gets $68,000. The guy getting $68,000 or $78,000, whatever the amount is, he'll have grievances of why he should be paid more. And then you'll have grievances why you should be paid more. And this guy's getting paid. If you ever find out what he's paid, you're thinking, wait a minute, I work harder than him. I should get more. And so it becomes a bitter issue of why one inspector gets paid more than the other. I'm doing more inspections than him, or all this kind of, I'm smarter than him. I do better than him. That's the office politics. And that starts to ramble around. And I used to tell my inspectors, stop it.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting paid. You negotiated it. I offered it. You accepted it. Get over it. Now, how do you get more money? Get more certifications. Do your job well. You'll get bonuses and raises. But the more you keep whining and moaning and causing disruption in the office, you ain't getting buckus. I ain't giving you nothing because I don't need the grief. All right. So at the end of the day, I tell new inspectors, don't buy into the hype in the office. Don't get into it. Don't try to make friends in the office. They're your work people. Okay. Unless you have an after hours thing with them, don't do it. It'll sabotage your career in the biggest heartbeat. Yep. And at the end of the day, we got a call. Let's see.
Okay, cool.
Goodbye.
All right, we had a call and hung up. All right.
Hey, call back.
I probably hung up on him. I just noticed that their call coming in, so I just looked down and said, there it is. So my point is, there's good inspectors, bad inspectors. Inspectors have a responsibility. And again, when people say that inspectors can't do anymore, that's why they inspect, it's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Yeah. Because you probably never done what an inspector has done. To be able to walk into a project and look around and find the violations and have them just stick out at you, somebody's got to do it. And you should do it at the highest level. And inspectors need to take that as a very heavy responsibility. But don't fail people because you got failed 20 years ago when you were an electrician. That's the hat thing. So I get ADD. So I told you the first thing I said to Jeff when he came in, I sat him down and I said, you're no longer an electrician anymore. You're an inspector now. Don't be an expector. Be an inspector. Okay?
Yes.
Don't try to inspect for something that somebody might do. Inspect for what you see. And it's going to make your life so much better. Don't try to play Nostradamus. Don't try to be a fortune teller. Inspect what you see. It's hard enough that just inspect what you see and move on. Okay? And also, there is a level of immunity to this. If something's you miss and you didn't just automatically just ignore it or allow something that was a violation, then you do have some protection, right? Because you just didn't see it and you can't expect you to see everything. Okay. But if you allow somebody to do something that's not compliant, then you're going to have some accountability that you're going to have to answer to if something happens, that type of thing. So take your job. It's a great profession, by the way. Becoming an electrical inspector is now a path that you can have a very good career. My inspectors in Northern Virginia, they made $90,000 and $100,000 a year.
Oh, very good.
Inspecting. Pretty
very
good salary.
Too.
Now,
very
you might think, well, I make way more than that being an owner or this and this and this. Yeah, but they didn't want that headache. They wanted they wanted the 8 to 4. They wanted that in and off. They wanted to ride in a city car and do inspections and have the benefits and all that kind of stuff. Beautiful thing. You know?
Show up at 8 and on your desk is your list of inspections for that day, and you maybe you have to answer a couple calls, nothing that you weren't doing as a contractor. But I also want to say, when you're in that inspector's office, and maybe you're thrown around that you're some kind of code guy or you have that chip on your shoulder. Remember, those inspectors are probably going to go back on some stuff that you may have passed or failed the other guy, and they're going to make sure that you're doing your inspecting right too. So you're always going to be watched. And
so I tell people this: if you go to become an inspector and you go in there, be careful. If you toot it, sometimes I tell people it's not a bad thing to toot your own horn because there's usually somebody around that's not going to toot it for you. But when you're starting out, don't do that.
Don't toot it.
because those guys are going to be waiting for you to mess up so that they can make it known to everybody. Okay, you're a target. So go in there very humble. Okay, go in there, But anytime you get an opportunity in a conversation with the other inspectors or whatever, and they ask something and you know the answer, be very subtle and say, "Oh, easy." And I used to do that. I'd go, "Oh no, that's a violation of 210.52a. This," and they'd go, and they'd run over and get their code book, and it would be right, and they would go, "Okay." So slowly after time, it was so funny because that's where it actually started. When and I got a lot of crap for this too. It actually started in municipalities when they started calling me the electrical guru. People don't remember that back in the early 2000s. But he used to have a website called The Electrical Guru, and I took so much crap for that. People were like, usually over on the Mike Holt site with those idiots in there anyway. But they would go, look, Paul thinks he's the guru. And they didn't understand that was all marketing. The Electrical Guru, you ain't going to remember Paul, but you're going to remember Electrical Guru. So that was all marketing, but boy, I took a bunch of crap from that. All right, let's see what we got here.
Yeah. Oh,
Jay
coming
Grunberg.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
We got a call from Jay Grunberg.
There we go.
What?
Is this an April Fool's or what?
Is this April Fool's joke? Jay Grunberg calling?
Yeah, this is Nick Chill, by the way. How y'all doing?
Hey, Nick, how are you?
What's up, McGill? What's
From
up,
Jay
man?
Grunberg.
Ah!
That was sweet. That was sweet. How are you doing, sir? Thanks for calling in.
Good. Absolutely. How are you guys?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
We're great, man. What's up?
We're talking the good, the bad about electrical inspections and the inspectors and all that kind of stuff, and hating on people that hate on the inspectors.
Yeah, I got you guys on my 55 inch.
Oh, there you go.
Very nice.
Yeah, I should have at least shaved if I was
Yeah,
going to be on the 55.
Should have put some cologne on too. I could smell you. Anyways, what you got, man? What you got for us?
There is no way that company is in our chat. There is no way you named your company that, because there's no way you'd get any business. I'm not even going to mention it in the chat. Dude, there's no way that's his name. This company's name.
That's awesome.
Was that Deadhead Electric?
Yeah, it's a Deadhead Electric. Well, maybe it is. Okay. If I had
it must be a Grateful Dead kind of guy.
If I had that name, somebody would swear that it wasn't Dead. It was something else head electric, and I'd have to wear that all the time. You know, just like I had to wear the electrical guru for years. People are like, "Oh, Paul, he thinks he's the guru, like he's a swami," you know. So anyway, so what's up?
What you got, brother?
Hey, man. Here's a question: have you ever had to fail someone because of 110.12?
Oh, mechanical workmanship, those type of things. Neat and workmanship and all that goody stuff.
Yeah, all the neatness and.
Yeah. Okay. So give you my thoughts on that one. So Nika puts out a document called the Nika 1 document, which is a document for neat and workmanlike manner. The problem with the mechanical execution of work when it gets down now, obviously 110.12a, unused openings, yes, all the time. Okay. Sure. Knockouts missing, that, yes, all the time for that one. 110.12b, integrity of electrical equipment and connections, yes. Because of damage or bent or cut or deteriorating or corrosion, yes. Call that out all the time. Those type of scenarios. The 110.12 general statement, which is basically just electrical equipment shall be installed in a neat and workmanlike manner. That's the general statement. Of course, that's kind of funny because that's supposed to be the charging statement for the A, B, and C below that qualifies what's considered neat. However, we use that 110.12 all the time and say, oh, I don't think that's installed in a neat and workmanlike manner. I have never, ever written anybody up for that as long as it was compliant, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What looks pretty to, I've seen people post stuff that say, look how pretty this work is. And I look at it and I go, oh my God, it looks like crap. But I'm not going to tell him it looks like crap. It's in my view that it looks like crap. So again, it's very subjective. What is neat? What's neat to you might not be neat to Jay. And so it's very subjective to do that. So when if I had to fail somebody on this, it would be where they actually violated something, like the conductors in a panel were cutting across an open bus instead of routing in the space that's provided. That wouldn't be neat workmanlike. That creates an additional hazard. Anything that created a hazard, then I might throw under that category, right? Because then it wouldn't be neat and workmanlike. It's putting a workman at risk. But in my career as an inspector, I don't know that any time that I actually had to write 110.12 by itself. It always ended up being 112.A, B, or something like that in order to reject somebody. Because again, I was very conscious and aware of the fact that neatness is in the eye of the beholder. And if it's inside the wall, I mean, I'm a neat freak. Okay. You could put a level on my wire, on my cables, just because I knew it's in the wall. I knew it's there, but I got ADD bad anyway. But when, all of my stuff was perfectly neat and spaced out and all that kind of crap. But if it's not and people shortcut it, if it's still secured and supported properly, things like that, I'd have a hard time calling 110.12 out on somebody. As long as it works. I
think I get a lot of 110.3C, which is listing. Mm-hmm. A lot of times I'll get that one thrown out, and sometimes I don't get an explanation on what they're talking about, so I have to call in to the actual inspector, and a lot of times you can get them in the morning,
Well,
You call in to have like a
I'm
little window.
shocked that you get 110.3C because I would think of an inspection industry as an inspector. The number one call out for the inspector forever is 110.3B. That is the number one, 110.3B, installation use. Equipment that is listed and labeled or both shall be installed and used in accordance with the instructions included in the listing and labeling. Somebody didn't use it in accordance with its listing or its labeling, I would. Yeah. That one was on everything. Anytime something wasn't installed properly in accordance with its listing, you would 110.3B, 110.3B, 110.3B. And that was it. That was the most
I think
called
some
out.
of our guys throw in C because I think they're referring to B, but they probably just go to C. But yeah, I think B and C are the ones that I get the most too.
Yep.
I think the mechanical execution of work, that's kind of like an icing on the cake. If you've already upsetted that inspector, he might just throw that at you and just say, hey, you know what? Eat this as well. So why have you experienced that? Did you fail an inspection on that code article recently?
He's not going to say because that means workmanship. Come on, man.
Well, I'm just saying, like, how did that question generate?
Yeah, Jay, I just failed an inspection because I'm not neat and workmanlike. Thank you, Mr. Grunberg.
That's right.
Thanks, Jay. You can go ahead and look at that resume anytime you want.
Yeah, Jay needs the nebulizer. Redo that, Jay. Woo. So.
No, there's a journeyman on the job. Every time he walks by someone else's work, he's like, "Hey, man, 110.12."
Like,
I knew there was a reason why, and that's such an idiotic move for that guy.
Yeah, but he's just being a douche. You know, he just wants to bring up something. He doesn't know what else to say. You know, and it's probably the only code reference he knows, right? So.
Right.
You know?
Pretty much. I think next time he says it, I'm gonna be like, you know what? Those that can't do should teach, man.
Thanks, man.
There
you go. More of that. Well, he didn't call in to insult us there, but yeah. So I think a lot of times with the mechanical execution of work, it's so much. You really have to use A, B, and in 2020 code A, B, and C. Because those are representations of an action that is poor workmanlike. Okay, leaving openings missing, leaving damaged bus or leaving damaged breakers or things like that. Those are representations of poor workmanship. But you know there is a NEMA document. It actually references it in the informational note, the NECA 1 document. It's a standard for good workmanship in electrical construction. Great document. And NECA puts out some great documents, but that's a great document. The problem is it's an informational note, so you can't enforce it anyway. So you could pull that out as an inspector and go, this is what neat and workmanlike supposed to be. And then if an electrician knows, he's going to look at you and go, that's an informational note, Nimrod. You know, that type of thing. And so, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of great inspector friends. And they do amazing work, and I being one, so I feel I can tease inspectors. But the best inspectors that I ever know will give you a reason why they fail you. So if I'm gonna jam you with the 110.12, I hope that I can explain it, except for looking at you and say, yeah, I'd have wired that differently. And I'm like, and my response to that inspector would be, well, you ain't doing it. I'm doing it, and it's compliant, and you know that type of thing. But I've never given anybody a flat 110.12, but I can tell you I've given my share of 110.12 A's and B's. I can promise you that through the years. That's for sure. So, absolutely. All right. Well, Nika, thanks for calling in. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. I was on your exam prep last night, or your fast track.
Oh yeah,
last night, and that was a great show, man. I was trying to keep up with you. You're going so fast on some of the questions. I was like trying to write down everything and so some of my answers were different because I could only get like a range and a soup handler, stuff like that, and I didn't get the whole thing, so I would just do it out with what I had.
I have to tell people when I do those things because I'll forget something. I'll forget to say something because I realize I have a short amount of time to get the message across. And so I'm, it's like last night, there was something about the lighting comparing for the receptacles, the 1 VA per square foot versus following 220.14 I and 180 VA per square foot, and then applying 220.44, the demand factors for receptacles. And somebody mentioned up, and that's what I love about these sessions. Somebody said, hey, Paul, don't you have to compare the two? Absolutely. But in my mind, I'd already done that comparison. I looked at it and I knew that 19,000 VA at 19,000 VA square feet at 1 VA wasn't going to even come close to the receptacle load. So in my mind, I had already done it. But I forget sometimes that I'm teaching students. So I love it when the students chime in and go, hey, Paul, isn't that supposed to be that tells me that you're actually very engaging. So that's what I love to do.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it was awesome. I keep doing what you're doing, brother. I'm going to try to fix my YouTube thing here. I haven't been able to donate in a while because I can't get the thing to work. So I'm going to try to fix that here.
The little money symbol thing?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll look for a $50,000 donation at some point. Thank you.
That's right.
Appreciate that. Mortgage the house.
Yeah, it's coming, man. It's building up, man. I haven't been able to donate my $200 a week. So
there you go. That's what I'm talking about. Got to feed the family. All right, brother. Well, thanks for calling in. Absolutely. And I think we're about to wrap this up unless anybody has any other inspector questions. We'll answer some inspection questions. But thanks for calling.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great night.
All right, man. You take care. Thank you. All right.
And what happens when people get live like this, and it happens on radio shows a lot, is they'll have their volume in the background on too. So they can hear what's going on. And so if you do call in, try to turn it down because we can hear it too. And then we have to speak over it. But that was a great call. And,
what is Kyle? Kyle's got a question.
Kyle.
I'm going to be really funny
what did
here. You ready?
When you didn't know something.
What do you think my answer? Yeah. What do you think? What do you think Jay I was going to say to that first part?
What did you do when you didn't know something? Me? Not know something?
Me?
Like
me?
Are you asking like if we were you?
Are you asking Jay?
Oh no, yeah, right.
I think that's a Jay question.
I think that's a Jay question. You know what I do? So here's my answer. I asked Paul.
So let me give you an example because that you don't know everything, and I don't know everything in this code book. I know how to find it. So here's the thing.
Yes.
Don't have to know it all. You just have to know somebody that can help, and not everybody knows everything. So I used to tell my inspectors, we all have phones. Call me. Just don't fake it, and don't lie, and don't make something up. Call me. If I don't know, I roll with circles of people that will know, or I know how to look it up in the code. And I know time is precious on the job. And like, what if that guy's got 50 violations? I can't sit here and write them all down. Yes, you can. Okay. You do. But you don't know it all. And anytime that I had an issue, so here's how I would, so let me tell you how I did to inspectors. You ready? So inspector would say, what do I do when I'm confronted with something I don't know? I said, look, tell him that you write what you do know down and then go, okay, let me go to the car and look this up for a second. Never say I don't know. Okay.
Right.
To a contractor, if you're an inspector, never say I don't know. That will come back to haunt you. What you say is, let me go look that up in the code. I have somewhat of an idea, but I need to confirm. Go to the car, look it up, pick up the phone, call somebody, ask somebody, that type of thing if you don't know. Or it gives you the time to go into the code and use all those skills that you're developing with all the code classes. How to look at it and go, okay, what is he asking? If I'm doing a residential installation, then probably the lion's share of things are going to be in 210, the lion's share. Because really, to be honest with you, residential, you're in 210, for the most part, you're in 210, you're in 230, most part. You might be at 400 for luminaires, 410s, things like that. But it's a nice, tight chapters 1 through 4 is probably where you're going to spend most of your time. Yeah. So you can find the answers in there. Now, ultimately, you get to a question where you just don't know the answer. Okay. At that point, you call somebody out. But here's the thing. If At this point, if you're failing something, then, and you don't know the answer to it, then you can't fail them for it. Okay, so your question is, what did you do when you didn't know something? I am not going to call out a violation if I don't know it.
That's right.
Okay, because you shouldn't fail somebody if you can't find the answer yourself, just because it's a gut feeling. That's why I say you call somebody up and they go, you know, I used to get, I mean, I still to this day, Jay, I probably get, and I should wean it off, but I probably get maybe 400 calls a week about code all over the country, from inspectors, people calling me up, engineers. One called me from, Puerto Rico today, an engineer on a situation. Great, sound like a great guy down there. And you don't fail somebody because you don't, you're bringing up something and you don't have the answer to it. If you just can't fail them for that. So I'm not going to do that. Now, I don't see something, and if I were an inspector and I saw something I didn't like and I said, I'm failing you for this, but I don't know what it is. No, that's not, and that's what a lot of inspectors do. And that's not a good approach. You cannot fail somebody for what you can't find.
I could also see, and that's a really good point. And I could also see electrical contractors like myself being put into an inspector role and possibly even going, oh, well, I've failed for this before, so maybe I should fail now that this individual is doing it and I'm in the inspector role. Now I need to fail him for that because I was failed for that, a couple months ago or something. Or I'm failing somebody for something that I failed as a contractor for, and I still don't know it. So I think that's where the hats have to change. And I think that's what you're kind of explaining, is that you have to put on that inspector hat. And with that inspector hat, you're taking on the responsibility of passing and failing inspections. And I kid you not, the failing inspections could cause, liquidation damages. It could prevent the job from getting done on time, and now that contractor is stuck in by liquidation damage, meaning some contractors lose tens of thousands of dollars a week or days or weeks without this project getting finished. And sometimes it relies on the inspector. So if you're failing people for something that you can't cite,
and trust me, if you don't think that a well-known contractor doesn't have power in that jurisdiction, they can, in my jurisdictions that I worked in, all they would have to do is pick up the phone and call the mayor's office and complain. Yeah. They're still a constituent. So, they would call and complain, and it would come down, and they would say, Jim, why did you fail this? And if you have to sit in front of your supervisor and explain to them why I failed it, and you can't explain why you failed it because you didn't give a code reference, and you stopped a project, or you caused a delay in a project, or a timeline to get behind, and you can't justify why you did it, that's never a good thing.
Oh,
okay? Never a good thing.
That's like a police officer writing a ticket, not knowing what for. I'm just going to give you a $200 ticket. What? For what? Just because I can. Because I can. I can fail you. I can fail this inspection. You didn't have cookies and donuts for me.
Yeah.
Have you ever? As a quick question, did you ever show up on a job as an inspector and someone had food for you? Like, did they did they have burritos, like Santiago's burritos?
Dude,
or
I'll eat some
McDonald's?
food now. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, if you got food there, that ain't no damn bribe. I'm fat.
Hey, man.
I'm eating it. That is no bribe. Give me about 8 hours, I'll give it back to you. But, at the end of the day, example. So Deadhead says, what's an example? An example is if I'm doing an inspection and I tell the guy he's got one ground rod, and I tell him he needs two, and he asks why, and I say you need two ground rods, and he goes, why do I need two ground rods? And I say, okay, well, it says right in the code in 250.53A2 that I have to supplement if I'm going to do a single electrode unless I test it for 25 ohms or less. And there's my code reference. But if I were to walk to the guy and I'd say, if I put on a ticket, I'm failing you because your grounding electrode system's not correct. I'm an electrical inspector and I do it that way, you're a douche. I'm just saying it. I hate to be mean about it, but that's not a way to be an inspector. And it's my opinion. Okay. Trust me, I've been called worse, so I don't worry about that. But at the end of the day, it's a profession. You're an inspector. Take some pride in it. You should be wanting to give references. You really should be wanting to give references. So that way they know what to fix. So that my job's easier when I come back to look at it, because I'm only going to look at what I told you to fix.
That's right.
And I'm going to give you that green ticket, and I'm going to get out of there. That type of thing. So again, it's just, and I should retract that statement to some people. There are jurisdictions where the supervisors maybe tell their inspectors not to put references. Yeah. Then if you're one of those inspectors in those areas, and I apologize. But I would have been the kind of inspector, and I was the kind of inspector that I didn't care, because I always buck the system anyway when it comes to things like that. I put the code reference down. I was always protecting myself. I was always saying, look, I give references. I give code references. If I fail you, I'm going to tell you why. That type of thing. Okay.
Yeah, and we had projects, and I'd always have, as the lead journeyman walking the inspections, I would always have 2 apprentices with me with their tools on. And one would carry a 6-foot ladder, and one would just
whatever
be right by my side.
Wrong, you'd fix it.
Oh boy, we would go fix it. And I tell you what, by the time we got to the end of the hall and turned back around, everything that he hit us on going down that hallway was done. Whenever we would final test for outlet testers, when he'd go reach down, I'd have my guy plug it in for him. I never let an inspector plug in his tester unless he was very, you could tell those guys that they really want to. So other than that, you didn't have to do much but look at lights, and you hit the button, click the button, And
so you want to know something I used to do on the sites? I always would go, when I'd walk onto a site. It's funny because I got had a bit of a reputation around there. But I always never failed you without an education. Okay, I'll give you an education, and I really wanted to pass you. I really did want to have to come back again. But I used to go around and I would grab a stick on site. There's always a stick on site, or a broom or something like that. And I would always do my inspections from the very top. If it's a house, I'd go to the top and work my way down. And I would, as a method to inspecting, I would, work, clockwise around, from the second floor or whatever it is around. And I would always take a stick, or I would take a broom, and I would always go to the NMB that's running through the rafters, above the rafters, through the ceiling. And I would always be taking my my broom and sticking up there and seeing if the cables moved. And the guys, and I don't know how many times that I would hit it and the cable would move. And he'd go, "What's wrong with that?" And I was like, "Well, the code says in 334.30 that it has to be secured and supported. Granted, you are supporting it, but it is not secured, my friend. And you're required to still secure it every 4.5 feet. So you want to throw me some staples in that bad mamma jamma so we can go on and get on with what we're doing? Don't worry, I'll continue on, and when that's done, I'll come back and check.
Cycle back around at it. Yeah,
I'm here for you. I'm not going to just leave you hanging, because I have to come back. And if that's all I find, I don't want to come back. I want to pass you.
Is so much pain in the butt because I got to go back out again.
Yeah, well, I've got another inspection that'll be added to my list for a new installation. I've already been there once. I don't want to keep going. And there was times where you had to go back 2 and 3 and 4 times. And that's the other problem. When inspectors would say to me, when I was teaching inspectors, they would go, "How many things do you put on the list?" And my answer to that was, as many things that you find as a violation. Because what is more frustrating for a contractor is when an electrical inspector fails for 5 things, 6 things, and then comes back on a re-inspect and finds 5 more things. That irks an electrical contractor to all in.
Well, and a lot of times it's a different inspector because their routes change, right? Maybe A isn't there on that day, so to re-inspect it's B, and Inspector B, like you said, now he looks at those 5 things, but he wants to snoop around and look at more maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, man.
And it's still open, so, he can do that. But,
sure,
while you're there, and again, it's tough when you're a new inspector because, if you don't know all these things, houses gets easy because after time when you're inspecting, you're seeing the same violations over and over again.
Sure.
So you're calling out all the same stuff. So it becomes very easy at that point. You're looking around and go, oh, well, there you go. There's 300.4. You're gonna need nail plates or this, or you look at here and just say, oh, that's a 300.4D, or oh, that's one of those, or you're looking around and you're going, oh, that's that board hole from the edge of that board hole to the edge of the frame member is less than 1.25 inches. Okay, you're going to need a nail plate. So and so you do things so often that you'll know which references. So it's not like it's that much deal. But I will tell you, for my guys, I created a cheat sheet for them, right? So they had a sheet that was laminated, and one side was commercial, one side was residential, and it had all the common code references. And beside it, what it was is a narrative, and that would have that little cheat sheet that they would keep with them. And that way they could, when they're doing their ticket, they could look at it real quick. Most of the common stuff. And if it wasn't, common, then they could look it up. But I put that together for them ahead of time. And actually, by the time we finished, and when I was in Northern Virginia, actually, we had programmed most all of that in their inspection software. Nice. So it's just a drop down. They could drop it down. Okay. Oh, nail plates. Boop. There it was. You needed that. And it would give the code references, that type of thing. Boop. Okay. So that type of thing.
I lost my chat. My phone went out, so I cannot no longer see chat lines.
Honesdale says, Paul, as a master and EI holder, my guys hate and love me. Yep, that's it. They hate you and they love you. Yep. I will ask them what's wrong here before I look. Then I make them look it up for the code. Absolutely, that is the best way to do it, Honesdale. Perfect. I used to tell people when I was doing a lot of homes and big dollar homes, and I was teaching the electrical inspectors in the area, when they would come out, they were notorious. They'd know that if they came on my project, I would always tell them before they came on, I'd say, there's a violation in this house. Let's see if you can find it. And I was ready to fix it, but I always would do that because I was always teaching all the time for inspectors. So this is before this was a contractor, but I was teaching the inspectors code. And I'd say, there's something in the house. See if you can find it. They would do their best. They'd be hunting for it, hunting for everything. And every now and then, like for the bedrooms where you have to go in a bedroom and it's a kind of a hallway-ish type of thing. And then it opens up into the room. So maybe it's 3 or 4 feet of hallway-ish. It's not really hallway. That's part of the bedroom. Once you go over the bedroom threshold, the measurements for the wall spacing begins right at the edge of the door. Yep. And so I would leave a receptacle out of there or something like that and see if they were going to call it a hallway, which was less than 10 feet and wouldn't need a receptacle. And that's one of the things I would do every now and then for a new one. And they would go around, oh, everything looks good. And I'm like, that's not a hallway. Okay. Once you threshold it into the bedroom, that's a bedroom. A hallway is a transition between space to space or room to room. This is already in the room. That's very much it. Now, people can argue, is that usable wall space? Well, the word usable wall space doesn't appear in the NEC. It's all usable because chances are they're going to plug a vacuum cleaner in there, or they're going to in my house, my wife's going to plug a stick up in there. I'm not saying it, but she's probably going to put some kind of air freshener in there. I'm just saying. So at the end of the day, wait a minute, where's my joke button for that? Nobody gets that. All right, so, but at the end of the day, it will get used, okay? But that is very much wall space. I had a lot of people say that, wait a minute, the space behind a door when it's open, that's not usable wall space. There is nothing in the code that says usable wall space. So since I can put a receptacle up to 6 feet from the doorway, why am I putting it behind the door anyway? Put it out just past the opening of the door if you're worried about it. You can put it within 6 feet. So that door better not be 6 feet wide. So again, it's all design. But again, the usable wall space, things like that, doesn't appear in the code. There's no such thing as usable wall space. Okay.
Yeah, I think it goes to a good point too. Is there's a lot of contractors that probably could be inspectors. There's a lot of contractors out there that probably know more than the inspector. It's just that inspector's job is to inspect that contractor's work that day. So with that being said, as an inspector, you can still learn. You're still learning. You still have to go through the process. You have to get in the habit of writing up tickets, filling them out properly, turn them in. Like you said, revisiting jobs. So there's a role that you have to play as an inspector, and you can actually learn from the contractors.
Yeah,
and that sounds like
absolutely.
what you were doing there for them was teaching them how to become inspectors and what to look for.
Yeah.
So
JB asks, how much liability does an inspector have? An inspector has a bit of immunity working for a municipality as long as they don't have an application where you, let's say, JB, you're doing an inspection and you know something's wrong and you pass it anyway, then you have potential liability. Okay. But somebody's going to have to prove that you knew that you didn't know that that was a violation. Okay. If you have a conversation with an electrical inspector, a contractor as an inspector and say, code says to do this, but I'm going to let you do this. And nothing's documented as far as an amendment to the state or anything. So let me give you an example. If they require AFCI protection, but you say, don't worry about it. If something happens in the fire, they are going to come after you. Okay. There's a such thing for inspectors as misfeasance, malfeasance, and non-feasance. Knowing it's a violation and you know it and you observe it and you happen to opine about it and somebody knows about it, but you ignore it, you're going to be potentially on the hook. Now, if you do an inspection and you just miss something, you're not going to be liable for that. Okay. But if you intentionally overlook something, that's why I tell inspectors, hey, follow this book. Follow this book. It's black and white. Anytime there is a gray area in here, just make sure it passes the smell test. In other words, look at it and go, this could go either way. I understand your argument. Okay, so I am going to make an interpretation that this is okay because it's a gray area. And you get that allowance under Article 90 in ENEC to do that. But it doesn't give you permission to just simply circumvent what the code says. Then that would be a problem where you would have some potential liability. But no, if I'm an inspector and I just missed something and somebody comes after me later, it's like, dude, I do a lot of inspections. I can't see everything. Then you're going to have immunity for that. You're going to be okay. Vin says, I had an inspector to change Schedule 40 to rigid pipe to come off of from the underground to the surface floor. Is that right? Well, it sounds to me, Vin, like he possibly thought it was subject to physical damage. And Schedule 40, I don't believe is in a location where it can be subject to physical damage. That would be Schedule 80. Probably should have asked you to do it in AG. Nobody wants to do rigid if you ain't got to.
What did you say? What size was it? Was it 4 inch? It says
Schedule 40 to rigid. Of course, Schedule 40 is rigid. Size? That's rigid polyvinyl chloride, but I'm assuming he means rigid like RMC.
RMC, sure.
First of all, that's a crazy transition anyway. So you can't go from PVC to rigid without some type of properly listed transition fitting, for one. Okay. And two, ain't no inspector going to make me go from Schedule 40 to rigid. Okay. That's up to me. He might say that you got to protect it from physical damage. Well, then I'm going to go in the code and I'm going to look at what allowances I have to protect me from physical damage. Okay. And so at the end of the day, is he going to tell me that I couldn't run Schedule 80? Because I would be able to transition from 40 to 80 because the fittings aren't rated 40 or 80. They're just PVC fittings, the coupling. The outside diameter is actually the same. The inside diameter is what changes between 40 and 80. So that's what I would transition to, and I'm going to use Schedule 80, and I can promise you it's much better than using rigid, okay? So I would balk in that, inspector. I'd say, you can't make me use rigid. You're not designing this project. But if you're telling me that it's subject to physical damage and you need it to be something that's rated for that, then it's up to me to say, okay, I'm going to use Schedule 80 because that is subject. Okay. George is trying to make me retire or something. Yeah. Well, actually 400 probably wouldn't retire me. So anyway, that's my thing.
Thursday night dinner.
It would be. As much as I eat that would, here in Texas, that'd be a nice dinner. That'd be a decent dinner, man. I need a steak dinner. Somebody pony up. I got to get out and eat. Come on. So, all right. Anyway, Good questions, great interaction. I think, to sum it up for electrical inspectors, great career. It's now become a career path. You don't have to be an electrical guy to be an electrical inspector, but let me tell you, it certainly does help. And if you're getting into it and you have very little experience in electrical, but you have some experience in it, immerse yourself in the code book. That is your job. It's not your job to tell somebody how to wire something. It is your job to determine whether or not it meets the minimum safety standards or any amendments that your state might have to those minimum safety standards, right? And so that is your job. And also, like it or not, my opinion is that all electrical inspectors should also be considered educators. As long as you're actually educating and you're not making crap up. That I can't stand. So people ask me all the time why I quote code all the time in videos and everything like that, right? It's because it's very hard to critique somebody if you don't know what you're talking about when you're doing it. And so I work very hard to make sure that I can quote things so that somebody can learn from it. And that was the whole reason that I started the Electrical Blunders. Again, to help, not that guy that's doing it, that DIYer, he could care less. He could care less.
He's already done the video. I'm doing it as a critique for other electricians who can look at it and say, well, that is true. And maybe they can train somebody else or tell somebody else how to do things right. That type of thing. Okay. So anyway, don't be a chip on your shoulder type of electrical inspector. Remember, we always learn something every day. I tell people all the time, you might have a repository of knowledge that could be as much as 60, 70, 80%, but somebody else always has that 20% that you're trying to achieve, that all-seeing knowledge. Take what you can from them and add it to your repertoire, because you're going to lose knowledge over time. We forget things. We're very forgetful, okay? We are very forgetful. So you're always having to replenish thou cup of knowledge. And so when I talk to educators, I don't care whether they've been teaching for 50 years or a guy that's new. There's probably something I can pick up from that person. I'm always listening. I am never above them. I don't portray below them. I walk alongside them. Okay? So I tell people all the time, if I lead, they may not follow. So I have to walk with them, learn with them, convey with them, teach with them. And that's what I expect inspectors to do as well. Is it a little more burden for them? Yep. But get over it. You're getting paid to do this job. So that type of thing. Anyway, Paul Honesdale says, Paul, I have an issue with the Eaton's 40 space 80 circuit panel. I need your opinion. Can the panel be filled completely with tandem breakers, even if they are not current limiting CTLs? Can't answer that question. That should be very evident on Eaton's panel legend. It should tell you what you can and what you can't put in it, right? So that's my opinion is whatever the panel says, whatever the legend allows, because on it, it'll list the breakers that can be used in it and all that type of stuff. So if that's the case, I go with what the actual label says on the actual panel. Manufacturers are the experts at that. And if they make an Eaton panel and they make it and it allows for tandems to be used in 80 circuit and it lists it on their legend, then I'm okay with it. Okay. That's kind of an Eaton question. That would go back to a 110.3B. That would be, what is that panel listed for? That type of thing. Yeah. Right. So, that's the only way I can answer that one, Hosedale, is that's how I would address it. I would always, inspector, look at the legend and make sure those type of things are perfectly acceptable. Most all of them will list what type of breakers can be used and how many spaces you have, and all that type of stuff is usually always on the legend somewhere, that type of thing. So it's the only way I can answer that question. So hopefully I did the best I could. And we knocked out a lot of questions tonight.
It's a lot of stuff. I tell you what, it's some of the best times that I had was as an electrical inspector.
Sure.
In fact, before I even came supervisor and then the engineer for the city and all this kind of other stuff, it was so much peacefuler as the electrical inspector. I came to work, I got my tickets, I did my inspections. I listed them in the computer. I got to go home, come back the next day, and do it that way. I didn't have to listen to the mayor or the city manager or the consumers griping or the supervisor having to work with people off and schedules. All I did was inspect, So, and I knew that wouldn't last because I'd already been promised where I was going to be. But that was a fun time because I just get in my city car and just go. And it's something great about being in freedom of an inspector, right? You're getting paid, municipality, job security. They can't really terminate you unless you do something wrong if they have a grievance program. The neat thing about it is you're on your own, and when you want to stop at a 7-Eleven, you stop at a 7-Eleven, get a Slurpee. You do whatever you want to do, right? And they have that freedom as long as you get your tickets done, that type of thing. We didn't like carryover tickets. I don't want to carry those tickets over, okay? Get them done today because you had 20 today. You'll probably have another 20 tomorrow. If you carry over 5 from the day, then you're going to have 25 tomorrow, that type of thing. Okay, so, that's the only real headache you ever really had to have about that. And if you're really savvy with the code, you ever heard about those jobs that were very easy, right? You feel very comfortable with. So, for example, like grounding and bonding, people stress out about grounding and bonding. But for me, I'm so comfortable with grounding and bonding. I'm like, bring it. It just makes, there's no stress involved in it. So jobs that you can reduce the stress are jobs that you truly prepare yourself for really hard. Learn this code book. Learn it because it really makes your job as an inspector so much easier, right? Because all you got to do is call it out and you'll get better. Trust me, you'll get better. It doesn't take you, by the time you do 10 inspections, things will start popping out. It's like one of those video games, see a violation over there, it'll be like, that's what it's like when I walked into a house. It's like, I'd be like, there's a violation right there. There's a violation right there. Oh, that panel's done wrong. That's an improper case to neutral. There you go. That's 250-24. A5. That's a violation. Let me write that down. It just start writing stuff down.
Yeah, show your notebook that you have because we were talking about that off air. That was perfect.
Now this is kind of similar like what I would have. All inspectors should have something they write notes when they go around. A lot of times it's the inspection ticket, but now everything's computerized, so who wants to carry that sucker around, right? So I'm a big advocate of carrying a notepad around. One, probably because I'm probably 2 sheets from the wind from having Alzheimer's disease or something, because my memory's getting worse every day. But I like having little notepads to write things down. So inspector that has a nice little notepad, you go out to the job and you can walk around and you can give his code references. Yep. And you can write stuff down, or you can write something down. Maybe you don't have the reference, but you take it back to your car so you can do your inspection ticket. I always also told guys, do their inspection ticket in your car. Don't do it out on the job while they're sitting there looking over your shoulder. Say, okay, well, I'm going to go over here. I'll get your ticket. I'll bring it back out to you in just a second. And that's where you get a chance to look stuff up. Unless it's only 2 or 3 or 4 violations and you already know those right off the top of your head. You see them all the time and you're going, okay, I get it. This is 334.30, securing and supporting issue. Okay, I get it for A and B. Write that down. Those type of things. Other than that, I used to carry this. This not the one obviously I carried, but this is like a little notepad that I would have. Now it's got my company name on it and everything, but you have it in your pocket. And, it's got a blank and got some little sticky tabs, a little note stick pad, anything like that you can write stuff down on. But I also tell, electrical contractors, it's neat. Keep something like that with you at all the time, a notepad, even if it's just a little spiral notepad. Don't expect to try to remember everything because you'll forget things. Like if somebody calls you up and you got a meeting next week, just go, okay, meeting next week. And then when you can get to debrief yourself at the end of the day, you can look and say, okay, Jalissa, I got an appointment here and I know you need to schedule because you know how absent-minded I am. You married me, but I forget things all the time. But I wrote it down, baby. So I got it right here.
That's right.
So anyway, nice to have these little pads. So I got one right here, and I was flirting with getting these made up and giving these away as a giveaway, but I never got that far. But that's kind of something that I used to do, and I had my inspectors would have a little notepad, and I'd say, write things down. Just take things down. Take a picture. Also, they used to take pictures and send them to me if there was something like, God, what is that? Snap and send it to me, and I'd look at it and go, oh, well, that's a violation of this or that or that. Or that's okay. Don't don't worry about that. Move on. That type of thing. So
videos, FaceTiming now. You can get on a virtual call if you got questions too. Again, technology's not going anywhere but up. It's just crazy what we can do nowadays with them. I've done plenty of virtual inspections, and and I think someone asked about combination inspectors in the comment earlier too, and I've had to deal with those guys. And to be honest with you, they're probably, some of them are most down to earth guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually had my E1, E2, P1, P2, M1, M2.
Oh, very.
I had my building, mechanical, plumbing, electrical. Had electrical plan review. Had fire alarm because I oversaw fire alarm as well. I don't teach NFPA 72, and I have a lot of people that ask me that, but I did a lot of plans examining and do inspections also for fire alarm systems and all that type of stuff back in the day. But yeah, it's, those combination of the guys up in Northern Virginia that were getting the $100,000, they weren't electrical inspectors. They were combination inspectors. The more you can do, the more you can get paid. So in Richmond, the electricians usually started out around, this is dating it a little bit, but they started out around $45,000, $46,000 a year annually. And what they would do is for every certification they would get a 5% increase in pay. So if you thought about that, if they were an electrical inspector, let's say E1, they could get 5% by getting E2, another 5% by getting E3, another 5% by getting P1, another 5% by getting P2, another 5% by getting M1. So they would get a bump every time they step up and got another certification. Why is that justified? Because if I can send one inspector and I don't like it because I think electrical inspectors have enough to do with themselves, but you can't fight what's happening. And today, these projects are moving so quick that they want one inspector there who, while he's there, he can look at the electrical, the plumbing, and mechanical, because these guys want to sheetrock. They want to get booming, right? So that's, in many jurisdictions, that was the thing. Okay, so.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said, you put in the work and you get the certifications, you get more money. Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yep, more certs, more money. Again, and there's some guys that just say, no, I don't want to do that. I'm just an electrical inspector. But again, a lot of jurisdictions are changing. They're forcing you to become a combo. Because now they don't have to send 3 people to that job. One to do the mechanical, one to do the plumbing, one to do the electrical. They can send one person to do it. And it's very cost effective for the municipality because you got to remember, they're still getting the fees for each one of them. Right? They're getting an inspection fee for the mechanical, the plumbing, and the building, and the electrical, but they only have to send one person. Very economical for the jurisdiction. They can afford to pay you a little more money. That type of scenario. Kind of why they do that. Anyway.
Makes sense.
Nin says he has a 200 amp panel in a restaurant, 3-phase full wire. He wants to add a 100 amp remote distribution panel to accommodate the equipment. Do I feel any issues with that? That's like throwing a dart at a dartboard in the dark with a cat sitting next to it. You have to do the calcs. You're going to have to run the calcs. I'm old saying that would be something where I tell people, they go, it look like that's going to be okay. No, I'd have to run the calculation. You're talking about kitchen equipment. So I'd have to run 220.56. I'd have to run the kitchen equipment. If I have 6 or more, I can do a demand factor, 65% or whatever the demand. I have to run the math first. So you had to do the calculation to determine what your service is 200 amps. If I'm going to add a remote distribution panel off of that, I need to calculate what the load would be that's going to be on that remote distribution panel and see how that's going to contribute to the overall load in the 200 amp service itself. So, I couldn't really give you a number.
Yeah, those are hard questions.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times when you have a set of drawings, the engineer who did those drawings should have those calculations on there.
And that's a restaurant. So that's a restaurant. So I would think that there's some kind of engineered drawings or something.
Yeah, I think so too.
Unless they're just adding a remote panel.
To the city.
Well,
something like a set of drawings that you had, you would submit to the city, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So in our jurisdiction, for example, residential drawings didn't require plans, but all commercials did.
Sure. Makes sense.
So now when we started getting behind, we made a rule that only commercial projects that were $5,000 and higher had to have plans. But anything that was under $5,000, we had to have a drawing by the electrician. Didn't have to be engineered, stamped, but could be a drawing and have to give all the details. So our plans examiners, and myself including, we got really good at looking at drawings. And I was famous for my red pen, because my red pen, I wanted to get these plans out of there. So when an engineer would send something and I'd find something wrong on the drawing, I would correct it on the drawing and I would cloud it in red pen. And after I'm done, I would call the engineer and say, look, I made changes here because you made a mistake or something's wrong. And without fail, the engineer would always go, I'm with you, Paul. That's great. That's great. I appreciate it. Why? Because he didn't want to do the plans again. He was okay that I was willing to change something. Okay. Now, my building official only allowed me to do that. So be careful, because you have to have a certain level of confidence to do something. And I have a high level of confidence in the engineering aspect of it, that I didn't mind doing that, because when you change it, you got to be very careful when you change it, because you're not the engineer on record. But there's plans examiners that do that all the time. Jeff Harris, for example, is a plans examiner still for the city of Richmond. I told you about Jeff, kind of one of my students who ended up doing very well, and very proud of him. He does the same thing. He used to see how I would do it, and he will cloud stuff and make changes as well. And he feels very confident with it. And so I like, just as long as you feel confident. And I always tell people, as long as you can back it up in the code, it's all good. It's all good. That type of thing. So that's it. I like it. Honesdale says, clipboard is lighter than a tool belt. Absolutely. I do miss the tool belt. I still get out there and get the tools dirty. Again, my Harbor Freight, my nice tools, what's the name of that? What's that? Doyle. My Doyle tools. I'm telling you, challenge, go out and buy some of the Doyle tools from Harbor Freight. You're not going to be sorry. They kick Klein's butt. Check them out. That's an endorsement. Okay. I don't even see Freight with a banner below here. Okay. Why isn't Harbor Freight sponsoring this show? Harbor Freight and Ryobi. I'm Harbor Freight and Ryobi. Okay. Then what'll happen? Then Milwaukee will come calling and say, hey, we want a spot. Yeah, I don't want DeWalt. I'm not a DeWalt fan.
Me neither.
Like, he says kitchen drawer tools. Dude, telling you, Honesdale, I'm telling you, go out to Harbor Freight and pick up a side cutters of the Doyle and give them a test. Okay. And if you test them for 3 weeks and you don't think they're equivalent to a Klein, let me know. They're only about $15. I will buy them from you. I will cut you a check. But you got to go get it, send a picture, get a pair of them, go use it. And after 3 weeks, you go, Paul, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay. They have a money back guarantee. You can always take them back. I'm just saying. I'm not pushing Harbor Freight. I'm just saying. All right. That's it. Nothing else tonight. Again, everybody out there, make sure you go check out Electrician Live. We have some updated show, schedule for what we got coming up. So make sure you check electricianlive.com. Remember, if you have anything you want to hear on the show, can I blow them up? No, you can't blow them up, because if you don't like them, I want them. I love those Doyle tools. Anyway.
Blow them up. Blow them up.
No, don't blow them up. Or if you do a video or something like that. But what was I talking about? See, I get so distracted.
You're talking about Electrician Live and topics.
Oh, yeah. Go over to Electrician Live and see what we have on the show. It has actually been updated, so you'll see what we got going on in the next couple episodes. Should be pretty good. If you have any thoughts, anything you want to comment on the show, anything you want us to look at in the future, talk about, just like the night show was based on somebody sending us an email. It wanted us to talk about electrical inspectors. So if you got anything you want to talk about, just email us at where, Jay?
Host at electricianlive.com.
Yep. HOST at electricianlive.com. And you can send us a message and we will get it and we will do a show on it. How about that? Where else can you get that? Okay. Anyway, We're done. You put a fork in us. We went a little long tonight. Wow, we had a long show tonight. You can't stop it when you're just talking stuff, right? So everybody, I should mention also, for those that wondered, we do now at Electrical Code Academy, do we have an affiliate program. So if you're a social media nut, you're a podcaster, you're a message board poster, or you know people, a bunch of companies with a bunch of electricians, and they want an educational program, you want to make a little money, join our affiliate program. It is live and running. I've been promising it for over a year. It is up on our website. You can earn 10% commissions. After you reach $250 payout, you can get 1% increase all the way up to 20%. So again, great. It's offered on all of our courses. That's pretty good if you sell a bundle, man. That's a pretty good chunk. For doing nothing. If you want to get into the education business, but you want us to do the education, that's what we do. And you can be a partner, become an affiliate, and sell. We all win. You win, I win, we win. Everybody wins. The industry gets educated. People learn. We get better electricians. It's a beautiful thing. All right, Jay, say goodbye to our folks.
See ya.
All right, everybody. Take care. Week. God bless, and we'll see you next Thursday. Till next time, be safe.
Listening to Electrician Live with your host, Paul Abernathy and Jay Grunberg.